Neutral territory tasted like wet stone and smoke, a place where banners from warring kingdoms bled into the same gray sky. The inns all had the same rule: don't ask who you're taking orders from, don't ask why the guards patrol in pairs, and don't ask why the old border laws have gone quiet. I learned fast how to live on those rules. I was Seraphine Voss, and I had a debt written in blood I didn't spill. A brother locked behind iron doors in a kingdom that didn't care if you were innocent, only whether you could pay. I'd tried honest work first. I'd tried begging. I'd tried pleading with men who smiled like knives. Then I found the ledger, not in a library, not in a safe, not in a storybook miracle. I found it hidden behind a warped wall panel in a neutral courier house, where everyone pretended not to see the stains on the boards. The ledger named the same thing my captors demanded again and again: an heirloom seed, something called a nightsap core, meant to keep a war engine running when the other kingdom's magic failed. The twist was simple and cruel. The nightsap core wasn't for the war engine at all. It was for a cure. My brother's illness wasn't a sickness of flesh. It was something that crawled in the dark between soul and body, a parasite of old rights. The only thing that could cleanse it was the seed's latent gift, hidden power, dormant until it found a lineage that could wake it. Lineage I didn't believe I had anymore. But I'd seen the scar on my throat in the ledger's margin. I'd seen the diagram of the crescent, matching mine exactly. I'd also seen a name written beside it: Seraphine Voss. Either the world was finally mocking me with coincidence, or it was offering me a door. I chose the door. That night, I slipped into the castle at the edge of the neutrality border, where demons of law weren't supposed to cross. My instructions were mine alone, and my plan was stupid in the way survival often becomes stupid. I didn't have allies. I didn't have weapons. I had hands that could pick locks, and a mind that could lie fast enough to breathe. The castle swallowed me in cold stone corridors. Torches hissed, casting gold flickers across tapestries of old victories. My boots made no sound on the damp floor because I'd trained for this, trained by necessity, trained by a life where every no meant you starved. I found the chamber at last, guarded not by soldiers but by silence. A single door sat at the far end with a seal stamped into the wood. The seal wasn't a lock, it was a warning: magic leaves patterns. I ran my fingers along it anyway. The seal drank warmth from my skin, and for a moment I felt the air tighten like a breath being held. I pressed harder, and my palm warmed further, as if the wood recognized me. That should have been comfort. Instead, it felt like bait. I slipped the tool I'd made out of scrap and bone and worked the seal free. The door opened with a sound too small for how dangerous the nightsap core was supposed to be. Inside, a vessel waited, dark glass cradling something that looked like a seed made of night itself. It pulsed faintly, not with light but with presence. It was alive in the way storms are alive. I exhaled once, silent and shaking. This was it. I reached in. The glass was colder than ice and warmer than skin, and when my fingertips touched the seed, a thread of sensation snapped between us. My throat burned. The crescent scar pulled tight, as if someone had tied a rope around my voice. I jerked my hand back. Pain like that wasn't normal. Then the torches down the corridor flared all at once. A presence stepped into the hall like gravity. Vesper Kaland wasn't just a man. He was the shape of power carved into a person's frame. When he turned, the torchlight caught the amber glint in his eyes, an unnatural warmth that made my skin want to crawl away. He wore the stillness of a predator that didn't need to hurry. Seraphine Voss, he said. My name fell from his mouth like a verdict. I didn't answer. My throat wouldn't cooperate. My breath came too shallow, as if the scar was tightening the valve of me. He moved once, only one step, and the hall felt smaller. Guards might have surrounded me, but the true restraint was his. The air thickened around him like he carried gravity in his bones. I reached to grab the vessel anyway. My body moved before fear could finish becoming thought. The moment I touched the glass again, the seed responded, pulsing harder, rippling into the scar in my throat. Then Vest's voice sharpened. Theft is a language, he said, and you came here fluent. He didn't sound angry. He sounded certain. I finally met his eyes. In them I saw a beast that watched without blinking. My fingers trembled. I swallowed pain. I'm taking what was promised, I said, forcing words through the tightness. For a cure. A soft sound came from him, almost amusement, almost a threat. Promises don't stop blades. His gaze flicked to the vessel in my hands. The torches hissed again, as if the castle itself wanted him to approve of what he saw. Then he raised a hand, not to strike, not to seize, he gestured. Somewhere deeper in the castle, something howled. The sound wasn't wild. It was controlled, like the call of a pack trained to obey. The guards poured into the corridor a heartbeat later. They looked at me like I was already broken. I wasn't supposed to survive being caught by the Alpha King, not in stories, not in morals. Not in the kind of reality that punished women who took what they needed. They seized my wrists. When my shoulder jolted, the seed's pulse surged. Pain flared up my throat like burning wire. I gasped, and the sound that left me didn't resemble my voice. It was something older. The torches dimmed. Vesper's eyes flared brighter. He stepped closer while my wrists were held by men who suddenly looked uncertain. His presence hit me like a wall, no physical impact, but a pressure that made my bones feel exposed. "Who taught you to touch it?" he asked. "I don't answer to cages," I snapped, and the sound of anger startled me. It didn't feel like me, or maybe it did. Maybe I'd just been starving too long to notice my own edge. Vesper's jaw tightened. The beast in him shifted, seen in the tension of his shoulders, the way the guards hesitated as if his mood carried a scent. Then he turned away from my captors. One command: deliver her to the border judges. The words weren't loud, but the pack understood. Even the air around me felt like it was being guided. I was dragged through halls that felt like a throat being swallowed by stone. Outside, the moon hung like a coin someone would never pay back. They didn't question me. They didn't listen. My so-called trial happened the way sickness happens, fast, cruel, already decided. The Neutral Territory Council didn't care about truth. They cared about stability. And I was the easiest kind of chaos. My accuser stepped forward wearing a smile too bright for the night. May Larkspur. She had been family once. Not blood. Not officially. But the kind of closeness people forge when they want you to trust them with the keys you never get to keep. Seraphine Voss stole the seed, May announced, voice carrying across the border courtyard. She broke into the castle to curse the king's line. My chest tightened. I remembered her hands. How often she'd touched my throat, checked the scar. How often she'd asked if it ever hurt. I remembered her laughter at my questions. I remembered the way she'd always insisted we stay close to neutral territory because the old rules couldn't reach us. Now the old rules reached me fine. I tried to speak. My throat burned. May's eyes flicked to my scar like she'd rehearsed it. The judges nodded like they were rewarding her for being useful. The verdict landed on me like chains. Exile. Not just exile from the castle, exile from neutral territory itself. They gave me a path to walk until my feet bled and my will ran out. The guards pushed me toward the tree-lined border. I expected the forest to be empty. Instead, the wolves came. Not the guards' wolves. The pack Vesper commanded. They moved with eerie discipline, stepping from shadows as if the darkness had been trained to take shape. Their eyes caught moonlight and gave it back sharper. One by one, they gathered behind me. The nearest wolf, large, scarred, older than my memory, sniffed the air around my wrists like it could read my pain. Then it sat. The others mirrored the movement, forming a loose crescent behind me, not surrounding me to trap me, guarding the distance, keeping something else out. I turned my head slowly. May stood at the edge of torchlight, her posture stiff with satisfaction. She met my gaze, and the look she gave me wasn't pity. It was relief. Relief that I would fail. Relief that I would disappear, because if I disappeared, she could keep the ledger secret. She could keep the truth buried. The judges had been easily convinced, but I'd learned something in the castle. The seed reacted to me. If May had wanted it for my brother's cure, she'd have been careful. She wasn't careful. She wanted me broken. That was when my throat tightened again. Scar burning like the seeds was trying to speak through me even though it was no longer in my hands. I staggered forward one step into the trees. A wolf rose and followed, stopping when I stopped, pacing when I paced, not abandoning me, not pretending, just staying. By morning, I had a hollow in the woods where I could hide from patrols. I built a crude shelter from fallen branches and cloth, hands moving on instinct. I'd survived worse than hunger, but being falsely accused had a different weight. It made my soul feel like it had been stolen. My brother was still alive somewhere behind locked doors, but the seed was in the king's castle, and May had made sure I wouldn't get near it. I was alone, except I wasn't. In the late hours, the wolves returned. They brought scraps of meat and bones stripped clean. They left them at the edge of my shelter like offerings. I tried to refuse. I told myself I didn't deserve kindness, but hunger is its own law. I fed myself carefully, rationing what they left. When I finished, the scar on my throat pulsed faintly, and my fingers found it without thinking. The crescent wasn't just a mark. It was a door. Something inside me, something dormant, shifted when I was afraid. Not with violence, with connection. Over nights, the wolves began to change how they moved around me. They didn't just guard, they watched my hands. On my fourth day in the forest, I found a small, injured rabbit caught in a snare. It was barely alive, breathing in broken stutters, eyes wide with terror. My first instinct was to leave it. Survival taught you not to waste kindness, but the rabbit's pulse matched the burn in my throat. Like my power could hear the suffering in small creatures. I cut the snare away with trembling hands. The moment the rabbit was free, it flinched, then stopped resisting my touch. It didn't trust me at first, but after I cleaned the wound with water from my canteen, after I breathed slowly so my fear didn't infect it, the rabbit stopped shaking. I didn't heal it like a miracle. I healed it like a ritual. Care. Consistency. Listening, the wolves watched. One of them less scarred, ears too perked, breathed out and stepped closer until its nose hovered over my shoulder. It smelled my throat. It smelled the way my scar burned when I soothed life. Then the wolf lowered its head. Not to attack, to submit. The power in me surged. Gentle but undeniable. The scar warmed, a faint sound rose in my chest, not quite a voice, not quite a howl, something between. The rabbit's breathing steadied. My hands stopped trembling. I realized then, I hadn't been cursed, I'd been hidden. My hidden powers weren't for fighting men with swords. They were for waking what was dormant in the world. For healing. For binding animals to trust. For calling the kind of loyalty that didn't exist in courts. When I looked up, the older scarred wolf stared at the trees where May's patrol party had passed the day before. It growled low. Not at me, at her. The wolves didn't hate humans the way humans wanted them to. They reacted to intention. May's presence made the air wrong. A week later, patrols stopped coming close. I didn't know if it was because May had lost interest, or because the pack had decided I wasn't theirs to lose. Then Vesper Kalen found me. He didn't come like a hunter forcing his way into my hiding place. He arrived quietly, with the same controlled gravity as in the castle corridor. The wolves parted without being told. Their bodies angled so the king could see me. But the forest still looked protected. Vesper stood at the edge of my shelter, hands relaxed at his sides like he wasn't planning to break me. My throat burned. Not pain this time. Recognition. What did you do to the rabbit? He asked. I held his gaze. Even when my knees threatened to buckle. I freed it, I said. I cleaned the wound. He didn't smile. His beast shifted under his skin, seen in the faint flecks of his jaw. That scar didn't come from theft, he said. My heart hammered. You don't get to decide what it means. A silence settled between us, thick as velvet. The pack watched from trees. One wolf sat with patience. Another stared like it could drag him closer. Vesper's eyes dipped to my throat scar. Then he looked away, as if he was fighting the urge to touch. As if his power demanded restraint. You were judged without hearing, he said, voice rougher than before. May Larkspur spoke, and your name became a weapon. My breath caught. How do you? I know the way lies move, he said. They leave scent. My anger flared then, hot and sharp, because being seen like that hurt. It meant someone had been looking, and the only reason they didn't stop it was choice. I didn't steal to curse you, I said. I stole to save someone, and you were exiled for it. My throat burned again, and I realized the seed's power wasn't only inside my body. It was in the choice I made, caring for life, even when I was starving. Vesper stepped closer by a fraction. The wolves tensed. He raised one hand slow, not to command them into submission like property. To reassure, the tension eased. He looked at me like I was both dangerous and necessary. I can return the seed, he said, but you will come with me. My instincts screamed no. I'd already been caught. I'd already been punished. A king's help might be a trap dressed in velvet, so I took the only agency I had left. You don't get to order me, I replied. You ask. His eyes narrowed, but the beast's posture shifted, like something in him respected the challenge more than it disliked it. He didn't force the question into obedience. He waited. Seraphine Voss, he said again, and this time my name didn't sound like a verdict. It sounded like a key turned in a lock. Will you come back to the castle and see what was taken from you? I swallowed. My throat scar pulsed like it had been listening to his voice the whole time. I shouldn't trust him, but my brother's life waited. My hands waited. And the wolves, those quiet guardians, followed my answer before my mind could catch up. I nodded once. Vesper turned like the forest itself recognized him. He guided me out with the pack around us, keeping distance between me and patrol trails. No chains, no cages, just protection. As we crossed back into castle territory, the air changed. Stones cooled my skin, the towers watched like teeth. The doors opened without being forced. Inside, servants moved carefully, eyes sliding away from me like they feared what I might reveal. I felt their judgment like a draft, thin, sharp, persistent. No one asked my story, they didn't need to. May had already built the narrative, and narratives were easier than truth. But the wolves behaved differently. They paced close to my legs. They lowered their heads when I passed. They made space as if my presence carried a hierarchy older than the court. When I entered the throne corridor, I expected Vesper to announce me. Instead, he led me toward a quieter wing, rooms meant for caretakers and healers. Not for punishment, he stopped before a door carved with vines. You can leave if you want, he said. My head snapped up. After you exiled me? His expression didn't soften. His beast did something subtler. calming like it was holding its breath. You were exiled by judges, he said. Not by me. The wall inside him trembled at that admission. I stepped past him anyway. Inside, warm herbs filled the air. Linen hung clean and folded. A table sat ready like someone expected me to arrive. My throat scar burned faintly. Hidden power recognized an environment designed for healing. Vesper watched from the doorway, like he wasn't sure where he belonged. Like his presence might break the fragile balance he'd created. I approached the table and began to work without asking permission. I didn't know what he planned, but I knew what I needed to do. First, assess. Second, cleanse. Third, listen. If I had to wake the cure, I had to learn what the seed would respond to. I couldn't rely on a king's word. I relied on my hands and my senses. I found a bowl of water and traced the crescent scar gently with my fingertips. The warmth under my skin deepened. Then the herbs in the room began to shift, scent pulling toward me like a tide. Vesper's eyes widened in the small amount. His beast growled once, not in threat but in agreement. My healing instincts, my ordinary, patient rituals, were changing the space. Then he returned with the vessel. The seed sat inside dark glass, held carefully as if it might bruise. The moment it entered the room, my throat tightened like a fist. Vesper set the vessel down at a distance from my hands. He didn't force contact, he gave me choice. Use it, he said. I will, I replied. But not for a court performance. The beast in him shifted, impatient. His pack tensed in the hallway beyond the door. Vesper breathed out slowly. The tension eased. Slowly, the king's walls began to rearrange around my agency. I examined the seed's surface. It wasn't just dormant. It held impressions, memories pressed into night itself. I could feel pressure in my veins when I got close, as if the seed recognized the scar and tried to merge with my body. I needed to ground it. I needed my own rhythm. So I did what I'd done in the forest. I hummed. A low, steady tone, not a performance. A way to anchor my breath. A way to tell the world, I am here. I am not fleeing. The room responded. The herbs quieted. The glass vessel warmed. The seed pulsed and the scar on my throat sang back without words. Vesper stepped forward half a pace. His wolf's ears flattened. One whined softly, as if asking for permission to come closer. Vesper's gaze locked on me, not pleading, not demanding, watching. Like he was learning a new language too. When the seed's pulse stabilized, I reached for it. The moment my fingertips touched the glass, the world narrowed to sensation. Pain sparked across my scar, but it didn't break me. It moved through me like a cleansing fire. Light didn't fill the room. Something deeper did. Threads of warmth stretched from the seed to my throat and into my chest. The humming became easier, because the power wasn't resisting now. It was sinking. Then I felt the memory behind the seed. A lineage, a rite, a sacrifice. Not my sacrifice, a woman's sacrifice. A promise that had been buried. The revelation hit like a cold wave. May wasn't just an accuser. May was an accomplice. She had been carrying the ledger. She had been guiding the judges. She had been feeding the court a story so she could keep control of the rights. Truth. And she'd done it because the cure would prove something the kingdom's old rulers wanted hidden. It would prove the seed chose me. It would prove my brother wasn't doomed by fate. It would prove the curse narrative was a lie meant to keep the court obedient. I pulled the seed's warmth into myself carefully, then placed my palm over my throat scar and breathed until the pain became a steady pulse. When I opened my eyes, Vesper looked different. His gaze didn't ask for obedience anymore. It asked for understanding. I can bring it to your brother, he said quietly. I didn't come to be handed back, I replied. He nodded once, like he accepted the condition. Then we go together. You decide how. For the first time since I'd been dragged into exile, I saw it clearly. His protection wasn't possession. It was choice. Choices had consequences. When we traveled at night through neutral territories' boundary lines, I felt every patrol's suspicion drift toward me. People saw my scar and remembered the story May had planted. They saw me and assumed danger. To them, I was the theft, I was the curse, I was what ruined peace. But the pack moved around me differently, as if their scent logic overruled the court's fear. At a checkpoint, an old veteran guard lifted his hand to block us. No women pass this line, he said. Not after what she tried to steal. My heart pounded, but I didn't panic. I used the only weapon I had, my voice and my steadiness. I hummed once, low and even. The seed's warmth responded inside my throat. The scent of healing, faint herbal night smooth, rose from my skin. The wolves beside me paused. The veteran guard blinked, uncertain. His eyes flicked to the ground like he'd suddenly forgotten why he was angry. The pack exhaled. A young wolf stepped closer to my leg and bumped my knee gently. Not demanding. Offering balance, the veteran guard swallowed. Go on, he muttered, as if forced by something he couldn't explain. We passed. I realized then, hidden power didn't only heal bodies. It shifted the world's instinct. It influenced animals. It softened the will of those who lived by routine. It made me dangerous without violence. When we reached the prison wing where my brother was held, the air was colder, thick with damp chains and old prayers. Guards wore expressions that said they didn't care about suffering. They only cared about orders. Vesper didn't rage. He didn't shout. He walked in like the building was smaller than him. His wolves followed. The guards stiffened, then stepped aside as if their courage ran out one breath at a time. Inside the cell, my brother lay on a cot with skin too pale, eyes too distant. The parasite had eaten his warmth. It had hollowed his face even before death. I rushed to him. My hands shook, but I didn't freeze. I cleaned the wound marks, small dark bites, then pressed my palm to his chest. The scar on my throat pulsed like it had been waiting for him. "Seraphine," he whispered, voice cracked. I swallowed grief so hard it hurt. "I'm here, I'm not leaving." Then I began the rite. Not dramatic magic. Ordinary steps done with purpose. Cleanse, ground, breathe, hum. When the humming matched his breathing, the parasite sensed the shift. It writhed beneath his skin like something trying to reclaim control. I didn't fight it with claws. I soothed him until his body stopped panicking. I guided his fear out through mine. The seed's warmth traveled through my throat into my palms and seeped into his blood like a promise being kept. The air around us darkened, as if night itself leaned closer. Then the parasite surfaced, manifesting as a shadowy thread that recoiled from the healing scent. It tried to bite, but the pack's presence pinned it by instinct. The wolves didn't need to tear it apart. They simply refused to allow it to move toward him. I drew the thread out with steady hands and pressed my palm over it until it dissolved into nothing. My brother's breath came deeper. Color returned slowly. He didn't wake fully right away, but the poison was gone. I sat back, exhausted, my shirt damp with sweat. Vesper stood near the cell bars, silent. The beasts in his pack shifted with relief, their bodies relaxing as if they'd been bracing for loss. I looked up at Vesper, realizing his walls weren't just stone. They were habits. And habits didn't fall all at once. He approached carefully, like my power might flare again if he moved too fast. "You did it," he said. I shook my head. "I didn't do it alone." His gaze dropped to the wolves at my side. He understood what I meant. For the next 2 nights, I stayed in the healer's wing beside my brother's cot. I worked through recovery the way I'd worked through survival, feeding him broth, wiping sweat from his brow, humming when his dreams turned violent. I didn't command his body. I listened to it, and the pack learned my rhythm. A guard tried to bring May's message at the end of the 2nd day. I didn't hear the words clearly. I only heard the change in the air when the messenger's eyes landed on my scar. "Seraphine Fuss," the messenger said, voice trembling. "May Larkspur requests your presence. She claims the king will regret what you've awakened." Vesper's posture stiffened. His beast shifted like it was snarling at the name. My throat burned hot enough that I almost flinched. May's scent was poison to me now. Not just betrayal, I stared intent. "You brought me back," I said, voice steady. "But I decide what happens next." He didn't argue. He nodded. That was his wall coming down, one brick at a time. We went to the neutral court chamber where May was waiting, dressed in refinement so sharp it looked like armor. She stood with her hands folded, as if she'd rehearsed the exact angle of her victory. The room filled with lords and representatives from multiple kingdoms. Neutral territory meant their politics overlapped. Their fear overlapped too. They wanted to believe I was an accident, a curse, something that could be punished until it obeyed. May smiled when she saw me. "You're alive," she said, voice carrying. How inconvenient. I didn't glare, I didn't argue. I walked forward. Every step felt like a quiet declaration. I still chose myself. I still chose life. The wolves followed my movement like trained shadows. When May's eyes flicked to them, her smile tightened. She hadn't expected that. She'd expected fear. She got loyalty. I took a breath and placed my fingertips against my throat scar. "My brother's cured," I said. May's gaze flickered just once before her expression smoothed again. "Then it's magic failing," she corrected smoothly. "Or the king is lying to you." Lies, always lies. Vesper's beast made a low sound in his throat, not from rage but from the pressure of restraint. The lords flinched. I turned my attention to the court rather than May. Agency mattered. I wasn't baiting him into conflict. I was asking for truth to be forced into the open. "May Larkspur brought me to this exile," I continued, "but she never touched the ledger herself. She used others to speak for her." May's eyes sharpened. "I'm sure you believe what you want." I hummed softly again. Not loud enough to disrupt the room, but enough to stir the air. Hidden power doesn't need violence to pressure the world. The seed's warmth stirred in my veins. When the court chamber's lanterns flickered, it wasn't from wind. It was from recognition. My scar burned brighter. The thread of magic between me and the truth tightened. A simple question rose in my mind, and I asked it without raising my voice. "Why did you choose exile instead?" May went still. Her composure wavered, just a heartbeat too long. She recovered quickly, but her instincts betrayed her. Her eyes darted toward Vesper as if hoping he'd deny me. But Vesper didn't deny, he watched. The wolves watched too, bodies angled toward May. They didn't attack. They refused to soften. May's voice came out smoother than it should have. Because I wanted you safe. The lie struck my throat like a slap. I nearly stumbled, but my hand steadied myself on the table edge. My brother's recovery flashed through my mind. The way his skin had warmed under my palms. The way the parasite had fled from healing. The truth was already inside me, so I spoke it. My cure was never meant to be given to neutral territory, I said. It was meant to be monopolized by the old rulers behind the veil. The ledger wasn't a rescue, it was bait. May's face hardened. Stop, she said. Not to me, to herself. Her hands tightened into fists at her sides, and then the shocking twist cracked the court's certainty open. The crescent scar on my throat flared with heat, and a mark appeared beneath it, a symbol hidden in the ledger's margin. It was a right seal, not merely skin damage. It belonged to lineage that had been erased from court histories. A hush fell so deep it felt like the air had thickened. The lords leaned forward. Even Vesper's pack grew still. May stared at me like she was watching her own plan die. The older magic didn't care about her stories. It cared about the truth of the seed and the bloodline it chose. My heart hammered. I hadn't expected the symbol to reveal itself now, but I also understood something. My hidden power wasn't only for healing bodies. It was for exposing the lies that tried to control the future. May's voice went quiet, almost broken. That seal was never meant for you. I looked at her then, really looked, not for cruelty, for closure. I didn't steal to harm anyone, I said. I stole to stop you from owning my fate. May swallowed. Then she looked away toward Vesper. Tell her the truth, she whispered. And it sounded like she was pleading even while she pretended she didn't. Vesper moved at last. He stepped closer, stopping before the boundary of the room's old wards. He didn't break them. He respected them. But his presence changed everything. My kingdom hid the right, he said, voice low. Not because it was cursed, because it was dangerous to anyone who depended on obedience. The lords blinked, their fear shifted into shock. Vesper's beast paced once behind his restless, as if it wanted to tear the lie apart. But he didn't. He dismantled it with truth. This seed chose Seraphine Voss, he continued. The court called it theft because it couldn't name its own fear. May's eyes filled, too late, too raw. Maybe she wanted mercy. Maybe she wanted forgiveness. But betrayal doesn't disappear because you regret it. I didn't punish her physically. I did something colder and cleaner. I withdrew my power from the performance. I ended the moment. May Larkspur, I said gently, which surprised even me. You'll be held accountable according to neutral territories' laws, not because you deserve pain. I paused, letting my breath settle. Because I deserve a world where truth isn't optional, the court murmured. Vesper's gaze flicked toward me like he was seeing the full version of me for the first time. A woman who could hold compassion and still refuse to be controlled. After the court resolved May's fate, imprisonment under neutral guard, Vesper didn't immediately claim anything. He didn't take my hand, he didn't announce me as his mate, he waited. And that waiting hurt in a different way than exile did. I wanted answers, I wanted certainty. I wanted him to stop looking like a man braced for loss. But slow burn isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's painful because it requires trust. He found me alone that night in the healer's wing, where my brother finally slept without fever. The room smelled like clean herbs and quiet relief. I stood by the cot watching his chest rise and fall. Behind me, footsteps approached. Vesper Kalin stopped at a distance like he respected my boundaries. I didn't come to claim you, he said. His words felt careful, like he was speaking around a crack in stone. Then what did you come for, I asked. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes drifted to my throat scar, then to my hands. Finally, he looked at me like he was deciding whether to risk vulnerability. I came because the pack won't stop following you, he said, and I won't ignore them. The beast inside him shifted, calmer now. My presence didn't inflame him, it anchored him. I turned to face him fully. What happens if I say no? I asked. Vesper's jaw tightened. His pack, still outside the room, made a quiet, expectant sound, not impatient, not cruel, hopeful, like they believed in me without demanding I prove it. I will accept it, he said. The way he said it wasn't triumphant, it was honest. Slowly, I realized his walls weren't just fear of losing control. They were fear of hurting me with power. He wanted to choose gently, and I could respect that. I took a breath and let my shoulders drop. Then here's my answer, I said. Vesper's gaze sharpened. I don't want to be anyone's prize, I continued. But I will stand beside you if you stop treating protection like a leash. His beast exhaled like a promise, being accepted. I can do that, he said. I didn't believe him instantly. Healing requires proof. So I tested him in the only way that made sense to me. I hummed again, soft, steady, and placed my palm near his throat scar, hovering just enough that he could pull away if he wanted. He didn't pull away. His eyes fluttered closed for a heartbeat. When he opened them, the amber gold warmth had shifted. Less predator, more partner. Your power, he said, voice rough, isn't only inside you. I felt it then. The pack's loyalty wasn't separate from him. It was an extension of his restraint. And my healing wasn't separate from their instinct. It was an extension of my choice. We weren't fixing each other by force. We were building something together. Something neither of our stories had allowed before. My brother's sleeping form in the next room reminded me what this bond could protect. Not just me, not just romance. Life, truth, second chances. Vesper stepped closer by another fraction, until the space between us was thin enough that I could feel his breath. I didn't flinch. His hands lifted slowly, palms open, hovering near mine as if asking permission without words. I gave. Our verge brushed. My scar warmed. His beast settled like a storm that finally found direction. A quiet growl rose from him, content, not possessive. The wolves outside shifted into a peaceful formation, their bodies relaxing as if they'd been waiting for this exact moment. I swallowed a breath that trembled. I was cast out, I said, voice low. Vesper's gaze didn't waver. And you're still standing. I was accused, I continued. And you're still healing. I was nearly erased, I whispered. And you won't be. The words didn't promise forever. They promised effort. And in a neutral territory full of broken rules, effort felt like the only true magic. When morning arrived, neutral banners stirred. The world expected a punishment story, a woman returning to her place. Instead, I walked out of the healer's wing beside the Alpha King like my legs belonged to me. The court looked shocked. The guards looked uncertain. But the wolves, those silent witnesses, followed my steps without hesitation. And when Vesper approached the throne room doors, he didn't push through like a conqueror. He paused. He turned his head slightly, waiting for me to step first. That was his transformation. Power that didn't demand submission, power that learned to ask. I stepped forward. My scar cooled from its earlier flare, resting like a satisfied bell after song. The seed's hidden power wasn't only awakened, it was integrated into my voice, my hands, my choices. Destiny fulfilled didn't feel like fate taking me away. It felt like fate returning my agency. And when I finally looked at Vesper Kaland with steadier eyes, I understood the real reason the beast guarded me, even while I was exiled. It hadn't needed to be told. It had already recognized me as the one who could heal what courts couldn't mend.